Welcome to the Listening Lounge. My name is Jazz and I've been an audiologist for 16 and a half years. And today's special guest is Oli Luke, who is the co-founder of Orange and Grey. Today we're going to be talking about the hearing healthcare industry as a whole and how to differentiate yourself in a crowded market. Thank you so much for joining us today, Oli. I'm super excited, more for personal reasons as well, but also just to get your insight on the hearing healthcare industry, how things have changed. But for those who don't know, who is Oli Luke?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I'm in the fortunate position that I've spent nearly a decade in the hearing healthcare industry as an outsider. So maybe I'm becoming slowly an insider. But I support a number of practices really to get their marketing right. I think the dynamics of the market are changing faster than we've seen. Generational shifts. There's been more change in the past 2 years in marketing as a whole than probably the previous 5 or 6 years. So it's a fast moving target, and I have a lot of fun helping practices navigate those interesting, unpredictable and very challenging times.
I think so for those who don't know, I recently opened up my practice just over a year ago, and I've been doing audiology for 16 and a half years. It's my bread and butter. But I think you don't really realise when you open a clinic how important marketing is. I'm doing all different sorts of things at the moment to try and build brand awareness and so on. But how important do you think marketing is when you have your own clinic?
Yeah, and I think marketing almost is the redhead stepchild, right? It gets labeled as just the thing that will bring in new patients. It's we have enough new patients, we don't need it. Fundamentally, marketing is almost the top to the bottom of your business. It's how are you perceived in the marketplace, from your pricing to your communications to how you handle when a provider moves on and you've got to communicate it effectively to your patients without causing any fallout or risk. It almost covers all those bases. So, my view naturally, and maybe from a biased perspective, I think marketing is one of the most important things to ensure that the magic that happens inside your practice is demonstrated, explained, and articulated to the people that have not yet walked through the door to ensure they do walk through the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great insight on that. And I think more and more people need to be aware that it's not just you as a practice owner or an audiologist. It is so much more to get people through the door and trust you with their hearing healthcare. But why audiology? Why did you get into audiology? You could have gone into dentistry, optometry, other healthcare businesses. Why audiology specifically?
Yeah, it was a huge accident. So I had a marketing agency here in the UK, and I had a client at the time who I was helping to launch a book. A guy called Phil M. Jones. He launched a book called Exactly What to Say that's gone on to do phenomenally well, a few million copies, multiple languages. It's been a big book. And we built a friendship as I was helping him kind of run the marketing for that. And he was doing some speaking and consulting for a manufacturer in the US. And I was just asking him, like, what does your next few weeks look like? And he's like, oh, I'm going speaking at this conference to hearing care clinics. And I'm like, ugh, that's weird. I've never really considered that as an industry. How do they get patients? And he's like, ugh, they don't really know. Like, they do newspaper, radio, people just find them, physicians, GPs. And we ended up just having like a 15-minute rant and rave about that as an industry, as outsiders. And then a few months passed, and he asked if I wanted to come along to a small event that was being hosted by Resound in the US, where there was around 20 practices in Texas coming together to talk marketing. I wasn't sure at first, felt like a long way to go to speak to people who were real adults, who have real careers, who actually help people. And I'm just a marketer on the outskirts of Manchester, working from Costa Coffee. But once I found out hotel flights and the bar bill would be covered, I was there, and it was my first kind of introduction, just to sit there as somebody who's never really been in the industry, to point at things and question them. We just had a bunch of practices at the end of that day who just asked Phil and I, can you help us to implement these ideas? We said yes, and then That was end of 2017. So 9 years ago now. And we've been kind of all in since then.
Do you think marketing in the hearing healthcare industry is different to that of other healthcare clinics at all, such as, I don't know, aesthetics or dentistry or anything like that? Do you think we need to market or look at things in a different perspective?
I think hearing care is probably one of the most difficult markets to market in, because fundamentally we sell something that nobody ever wants to own. Nobody looks forward to the day they can get their first pair of hearing aids. You look at dentistry, you look like anything cosmetic. This is enhancement. This is me heightening my confidence, heightening the way I show up, heightening the story I tell myself about myself. I think hearing care is somewhat the opposite, right? It's aiding a challenge, and you've got to admit to yourself that I've got a challenge. It's a very different dynamics from a psychological perspective. So, I think it's vastly different. The way that people make buying decisions, their journey in order to be ready to move forward with any form of treatment. There's a lot of emotional baggage that go into it. And I think the easiest way to look at this is nearly all purchases that we make starts with emotion, and then we justify it with logic. Like, we want the new BMW because it'll make us look good. What will our neighbors think? All the emotion rolls into it, and then we justify it by going, I can afford the payments. It'll actually be way more comfortable for the kids in the back. And then all the logic comes in. Hearing care is like completely the other way. Like, you've got to put logic first. I need to address a challenge I'm experiencing, and then carry the emotional baggage after. So it's like this identity shift, stigma, fear of aging. It almost goes against the instincts of how we buy anything else. So it's a fun puzzle.
So with hearing aids, most people kind of assume they're like glasses, and that you it's something that helps you. But obviously glasses are seen quite cool. You get designer glasses. Hearing aids still have that stigma attached to them. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think we've shot ourselves in the foot as an industry for a start. I feel we've almost allowed the stigma to become true, right? These are for old people has been the stigma. And the old clunky devices that still show up in stock images, that are still of a 95-year-old with these devices. Like, the story is always, this is a way that old people hear their grandchildren better or hear the birds in the trees. Like, that's still the messaging we run with as an industry. We try to label them as invisible, like that's the thing everyone wants. We say we'll colour match them to your hair so they're barely noticeable. Like, we almost go against the stigma and almost cause it to worsen. So, I think for a period of time, it's going to remain the same. I think the one thing that is going to change it, and I was very happy when Apple launched their hearing health features, where it now become kind of cool that you can have something in your ear all the time that allows you to hear better in certain environments as a basic kind of OTC device. I think that had a bigger shift long term of just changing the dynamics, because what we have now is a generation of people in their 20s that pretty much will walk around with something in their ear at all times, even if they're communicating with their friends, buying something over a counter. Like, I think that's going to change over time. There's going to be less of a stigma, but I think we're talking decades, not years or months for that big stigma change. I think it's a hangover of what we've had, and it's probably going to sit there for a long time. I don't see anything shifting it in the immediate.
So I recently did a hearing healthcare talk to around 45 people, and we were having a discussion based on this. And one of the things that came up was that hearing aids, it's seen as quite an archaic term for what hearing aids can now do. Do you think the terminology affects the way people think about them? I mean, in our clinic, we've started calling it hearing tech because it is effectively hearing technology. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think about the term hearing aid?
It's true. Like, in order to change the stigma around something, you've got to reposition it. That's what Skoda did, right? Skoda had a terrible stigma around Skodas, and they had to reposition and retell the story of why it's cool to drive a Skoda. Hearing aids are probably the same. Like, fundamentally, the language is this age your hearing, which suggests that you're only going to wear this if your hearing's a challenge and you need to hear better. Today's tech does significantly more than that. So I think relabeling it, repackaging it is a good way to go. Like, one of the big things that we help a lot of practices with is when it comes to sharing options with patients that need help, hearing aids are not even part of the conversation. Like, here's our treatment plans. Here's the way we're going to help you to achieve an outcome. We're going to need to get you the right technology. We're going to have to take you through this process. It's focused on the process and the journey, not the destination or the device. And I think the more that we get away from having patients think they're buying a hearing aid to solve a hearing challenge, naturally, as the industry we are, the simpler it will be to escape that stigma.
I think that's the lot that clients that come into the practice don't realise, because you could get a hearing aid from one clinic, a high street chain that might be significantly cheaper, but it's not just the product that you're buying, it's the aftercare and what's involved in that as well. So yeah, that's an interesting point you make about that. So is that, would you say that's what you tend to focus on with clinics?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that many practices have, and the market's shifting a lot now, right? We've got a generational shift from the silent generation we've served for the past 2 decades through to the boomers. Boomers, the wealthiest generation on the planet. There's more of them. They want to choose preference over proximity when they want to decide who to work with. There's a big difference in that. What we see with a lot of practices is we ask them why somebody should choose to work with you over all the other options available to them. And it's usually our service is better, we care more. It's the generic fluffy stuff that everybody else says. So the biggest piece of work we do with a lot of practices early days is help them get that bit right. Like, you've got to be clear on who you're for and why you're the best option for them. And value proposition's never been more important. We all think we've got value propositions of why we're different, but often patients discover it when they're face to face with you, not before it. And with the silent generation, we've seen people want to schedule time and then decide face to face whether you're the right fit. The internet with the boomers, they're going to decide whether you're right for them or wrong for them based on how they perceive you, your web presence, the story you tell, how you differentiate, etc. So I think that's been one of the biggest differences, is like, you've got to get that bit right. You've got to fix that big marketing puzzle, branding, story, who we're for, why we're different, why we're the best option, why we're credible at what we do. And then everything is downstream from that, like from your pricing and packaging. It all very much hinges on who we are in the marketplace and the way that we take care of people and the set of promises that we deliver on.
So you're quite a big advocate for premium clinics. What makes a premium clinic? Yeah,
and I'm an advocate because I think it's the safest place for any independent practice to play. So as I look at the market, you've got, and it's changing a lot right now with Amplifon's acquisition of GN that maybe we'll come on to, maybe we won't. The bottom of the market, the widest part of the market, the mass market, where the majority of the people are, where people think they need a hearing device to solve a hearing challenge, they are the waters that Specsavers, Boots, whatever high street chain, possibly the NHS as well in the UK, are very much in that area. With the acquisition of GN, I think the goal is buy more market share aggressively, take more market share, and middle of the market is going to get squeezed more and more. The average hearing care clinic in an average town that sells hearing aids for slightly more than Specsavers, but they're independent, the market conditions are going to become even more challenging for them as this vertical integration occurs. The one part of the market that is always going to be safe from the Specsavers, from the Boots, from the mass market players that can outspend you and outcompete you and spend significantly more to acquire a patient and sell for significantly less than you, is being top of the market. I kind of label it as boutique or unique. Like, you're not for everyone. You're for a certain type of person that wants a certain type of care. Now, that certain type of person could be somebody that really values a one-to-one relationship with a specialist and doesn't want to see a different provider every time they turn up. They want a long-term relationship because they know hearing loss is probably going to be something they're going to need help with for the rest of their life, and they want the right partner for the long haul. It could be for patients that just want highest quality care and really price isn't the motivator, the right quality care, service and expertise is. Like, just having clarity on who that is, then you can build value proposition and story to be the logical option for them. So premium practice, from my perspective, isn't really so much in the way that you do the things. It's the story we tell of who we're for in the market and why we're the logical option for them. And really, a big part of that is we are not trying to compete with Boots or Specsavers of selling hearing aids plus service. We're trying to help deliver outcomes, and this is amazing customer service. And we just matter to apply that to hearing care.
What do you think has changed the most in terms of marketing? So I religiously listen to your podcast all the time, Business of Hearing. We'll obviously put the details at the end as well. We're obviously moving on to AI now, and how people look into things has changed. What do you foresee clinics needing to do in order to get the same outcome as they used to before?
Yeah, I think there's three big factors that we're playing with right now. The vertical integration going on, Amplifon and GN are one of many examples, probably the biggest example of late, and that's going to make the middle of the market become more challenging to spend time in. We've got this silent generation to boomer transition that's occurring that is pretty sizable, not just from a numbers perspective, but also sizable from the expectations of that generation, which is pretty big, right? We look at post-war, 1946 to 64, boomers hold most of the income, biggest investors in health and wellness, invest in experience, they use technology. We've got a very different generation coming through. And then, of course, AI search on top of that, like the way that people conduct research before making a buying decision is never been easier. There's never been more access to information. And now everybody is a semi-expert in everything before they actually speak to the real expert, from health through to accounting, through to legal services. So it's creating muddy waters that's causing a lot of confusion. If you're a practice that has previously built a good practice, mainly for the silent generation, where they wanted to spend time with you, you probably did it through direct mail, local events, local reputation. Much of the foundations are the same, in my view. It's just we cannot be lazy anymore. We've got away with a good time for a long time. And I think right now we need to position ourselves as the best option. Like, we need the marketing to be absolutely solid. We can't get away with just running an ad in the newspaper and thinking that's going to feed us for months. Now we need to ensure that we're clear for who we're for. We look like the logical option. We collect all the evidence to prove we've helped the people we claim to help in the way that we help them. We communicate effectively with everyone that matters. Our pricing is correct. All the foundations now need to be done really, really well. We can't just get away with run some ads and that'll keep us busy, keep us fed, and keep revenue flowing in. It's now becoming a little more competitive as a marketplace. Patients are changing. They want to feel smart, capable, and good before visiting somebody like you. Everything now needs to be dialed up rather than getting away with probably what we've got away with due to the market being very different.
So you've obviously spoken a little about Amplifon's acquisition of GN.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that things may change in terms of the middle market and maybe pricing structure and who people tend to go to. Do you think long-term that will affect the unique and boutique clinics as well? Or do you think they will always have that price point like other industries have with their luxury markets as well?
Yeah, I think it will always be there. And I think if you split the market into three, right, you've got, and this applies to any industry, you have mass market, you have niche market, and you have luxury market. So mass market is your everyday guy on the street who has an average job, average life, etc. Most of his buying decisions, no matter what he's buying, is going to be cost driven. Like, is this the right price? Does this work for me? Can I get it at a better price? It's very much driven on that. Niche market, this is where people will spend more if it aligns to their identity, their interests, etc. And then you have luxury market where it's very status focused. It's I'm buying it to show other people I can buy it. And you can apply this anywhere, right? From you can buy chocolate, you can buy a Mars bar for 80p a pound, whatever. which is very mass market. You could buy a Grenade protein bar if you want to hit protein targets for £3 and spend significantly more for something that's pretty much the same, but with a scoop of whey protein into it. Or you could go out there and spend $400, $500 on chocolate that's been sourced from this. It's in a wooden box. It's a centerpiece of a conversation. Like, those three exist, and that would be luxury market. Or similar with a watch, right? You can buy something on your wrist for £20 from Argos that will tell you the time, do what it needs to do, have a long-term warranty, etc. You can spend $700, $800 on an Apple Watch because you want to know your heart rate variability, or you want notifications or whatever tech, and that's niche market. Or you could go and spend £50,000 on a Rolex relatively easily that is status focused, all about the luxury market. So like, the market always shifts in that way, and it always will. I just think fighting in that mass market is the most dangerous place to fight. And I'd always be looking at, can I go towards a market that has a certain set of interests, that identifies in a unique way, etc., wants a certain style of care, whatever it may be. So I think as long as you're always focused on probably niche to luxury, then you're never going to have to fight in that mass market. That's the safest place to sit.
And have you seen much change in the market since OTCs became available?
So we're heavily in the US market. So 2022 is when it really rocked up in the US. And as far as I know, that was before the UK. It's talk right now about it happening in Ontario, in Canada. It was an interesting one. I was expecting a big wave, and we were prepping all of our clients that we work with for like, okay, we need to front foot this, be prepared for it, etc. And what we seen when it happened was it caused confusion. Like, patients that were ready to move forward with treatment now just delayed the decision because the Wall Street Journal ran with a headline that said affordable hearing aids are finally here. A lot of the mainstream media jumped on it. It felt very political because it was aligned to a move that Biden had made to make healthcare more affordable for Americans. And it was at a time where it was quite hostile of what the next president was going to look like. It was almost very heavy in mainstream media. So there was confusion. We've seen a lot of schedules go from busy to quiet. And then what we seen was a couple of months later, schedules got very busy again. So I suppose just to put a through line through this is it caused confusion. People realized it probably wasn't the solution that they needed. And then they realized they actually need the right provider with the right technology. So caused some confusion, but beyond that, I've not seen it have a major impact. The most tangible one was some data I seen at the end of last year where My Vitals Pro, that is a tool that has about 1,100 practices data. They looked across all the practices data and they seen that the average age of a first-time hearing aid wearer had got older. So it'd gone from 70 point something to 72 point something. Now, OTC is a reasonable reason why that may have occurred. Because people are going, can I just aid this challenge for a moment, whether it's through Apple AirPods, whether it's through an OTC device, etc. So I think that's probably the most tangible stat that we've seen change. But it's quite interesting to see some of the big brands like Sony and a few others launch an OTC product and then quickly retreat out of that space. So I think Apple will probably be the ones that really try to take that market and chew on that market share. But I don't think it's a threat to us as an industry at all. If anything, it's going to be a gateway drug to get more people to seek help.
I completely get that. And I love the fact that there is like an intermediary device available where people who are kind of on the cusp may realize actually this is benefiting me. But the thing with that is when you've got AirPods in your ears and you're going out to a nice restaurant, the other person's just going to think, oh, they're being rude. They've got them in. Why have they still got them in? So I think there is a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a funny one with that.
Yeah, I agree on that. And it's interesting. Like, you look at people now and they're all over that. They do that all the time. It's just whether that will be normalized. And I don't know. It's going to take a long time.
So there's so many clinics that are out there where they've got their websites and, like you mentioned, may use stock images of older people. And obviously, as you and I know, hearing loss isn't just for people that are older. Why are people still using that? And why are hearing clinics still looking outdated?
It's a gripe that I have. It's a hill that I'm happy to die on, and I think there's no excuse to have stock imagery on your website in 2026. Like, we all walk around with a mobile phone in our pocket that has a camera that would have cost you tens of thousands of pounds 10 years ago, right? The quality right now has never been better. We're all equipped to be full-time photographers. And then on top of that, AI imagery is pretty damn good. It's pretty difficult to distinguish the truth from what's not. So, like, I don't think there's an excuse. On top of that, most of the stock imagery is just terrible. It is old people on a beach holding hands, which a clinic in the middle of Birmingham will have. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So I completely agree. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot from a stigma perspective, because nobody identifies older. Nobody looks at an older person and says, that looks like me. We all identify younger. That's why, even though the majority of new cars are purchased by people in their 50s, 60s, still on the advert, the person driving the car is a cool 20-something-year-old. We can all identify with younger, cooler people. We struggle to identify with stale, older people. So I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
In terms of a clinic, so obviously I've just recently opened up. My website is quite new and I think okay at the moment. But how often do you think people need to review that to stop it being dated and stop it being not necessarily just website, but your clinic as a whole and your branding as a whole? How do we stop that becoming outdated, and how often should we review that effectively?
Yeah, I think it's a never finished job. The day it becomes finished is the day it's going to become outdated. So you've almost got to look at this like a living, breathing part of your business. This is a member of staff that represents you, and you can either train them or leave them. But the moment you leave them, they're never going to get better for you. So I think it's got to become part of your belief system that this is the version for today, but it's not the version for tomorrow. So in terms of how often you should review it, I don't know. I don't know if there's like a certain, you should schedule time in your diary. I think this just needs to become part of your responsibility as the owner, to be like, one of the hats that I wear is ensuring we're correctly represented for people who have not yet met us. And if you get new evidence, if you get a new case study from a patient, if you get new photography, if your story changes or you've now got more experience or you've introduced new services, like, that's the first place you've got to think about where it's being documented and that story is being told.
So, Oli, if you were to open up your own clinic tomorrow, what would you do differently? What would be your unique boutique?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I was opening a new clinic tomorrow, and let's say I was in a very competitive high street, there was other independents, there was a Specsavers, there was a Boots, there was everything else. The biggest thing that I'd look to do, that I don't think a lot of practices do, is I'd really try to attach personal brand to the practice. So I would be intentionally making as much content as possible to show that I'm the local expert on everything hearing health. People want to work with people. People trust people. I'd be dominating as many YouTube videos as possible. I'd be going around doing reviews of other local businesses. I'd be going to the local Italian, the local Indian restaurant, writing about it, documenting it, talking about how thankful we are. If a new food place opened, if a new gym opened, I'd be the first there talking about it. I'd very much try and become part of the community and a voice in the community, and ensure that when people think of hearing loss, hearing health, hearing aids, hearing care, like, my name is the name they think of, and my practice is the place they naturally come to. So that would be the approach I'd take. I'd probably go from the traditional thing. I wouldn't send a piece of direct mail. I wouldn't be overly invested on Google Ads. I'd be going, how do I just become the local face of hearing healthcare, and really dominate in a micro area? That's the approach I'd go with, and just get very aggressive and good at doing that.
I know this seems quite a silly question, but what is a brand? What makes a good brand? Because it's more than just you and your website, and what makes a good brand?
Yeah, and there's so many different definitions of brand, and I don't think there's a correct one, or I'm sure there is in the dictionary. But my belief on a brand is, what do people say, and I suppose, what do people say about you that isn't what you do? And I think that's probably the cleanest way for reputation, brand. It all kind of aligns into that. Is if people say like, oh, that they're great, they're look after you. What is the things that people say that isn't? They do hearing healthcare, they fit hearing aids, they deliver service. I think that's probably the cleanest definition I could put on it. But it's fluffy.
Thanks for answering that one. So, Oli, you help other practices, and in your podcast, you talk about frameworks that you use to help them. Do you mind just going through some of that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you the full picture on this, because nearly 9 years in the industry, we first rocked up and just tried things, tried new ideas. I feel like we've run thousands of experiments on behalf of different clinics in different parts of the world to work out what works. And over time, we've almost defined this into almost a blueprint, a roadmap, however you want to phrase it, of 8 steps. And this is what fundamentally we take practices through over the first year that we work with them. And if you get these foundations in place, then you naturally dominate your marketplace. You become the logical option for the patients that you want. And this frame, what we're 90, 91, 92 practices that we've put this into place for now. It's added tens of millions of dollars worth of revenue to them. And it's not that complex. There's no wizardry in here. It's no, here's some magic. It's all the foundations just done to a really high standard. But I'll walk you through it, and I'll take you through the 8 steps. But the first step when we first work with practices is we've got to help them get definition on their who. It's almost start with who. It's who are the patients that you're for. Because as we've discussed, being for the mass market is just a very difficult bloodbath to fight in. You're going to have to fight with people who are equipped to fight a lot harder than you. You're never going to be able to outspend a high street chain to acquire a patient. You're never going to be able to outcompete them from a cost perspective. That's going to be a messy, messy fight if you decide to get into that battle. Instead, decide who you want more of. So there's a few frameworks that we take practices through in order to define that, from who are the patients that spend the most with you in exchange for the least, if you want the financial game. Who are the ones that you're just world class at helping, that you're the best fit for when they walk through the door. Really getting definition on who they are. Because once you know who you're for, marketing becomes a lot easier. If I was preparing a presentation and a talk, for example, knowing who's in the room really helps. If it's toddlers at snack time, it's going to be a very different presentation to a group of doctors of audiology in California to 12 blokes on a stag do in Amsterdam, right? It's a very different audience, but understanding who you're trying to communicate with makes it a lot easier. So the start with who is kind of the big thing that we help practices get clear on. And then we move into the second step, which is all about looking like the practice that you want to grow into. And really this is, okay, you know who you're for. How do we articulate why you're the logical option for them? How do we reposition value proposition to tell the story to ensure that when these people find you, they're like, these are my people. I found what I'm looking for. These speak directly to what I want, what I value, and my preferences, etc. And this very much flows through to the story we tell, the value proposition that we build, what the website looks like, the story the website tells, the imagery, the video on the website, all that stuff kind of flows into this. So we've got definition on who they're for. They then look like the logical option for those people through the brand, the story, the website, etc. And then the third one is a big one that I don't think a lot of practices do, which is all about building this never-ending body of evidence. So trust is probably the missing ingredient, I think, in a lot of practices. And what I mean by that is we all know we're really good at helping patients, but we don't do a good job of educating and articulating that up front. So in 2021, there was a study done by Havas Meaningful Brands Report, it was called. And they did 395,000 consumers. And they found some crazy stats. So 71% had little faith that brands will deliver on their promises. 75% said brands could disappear and they would be easily replaced. It really showed that trust is at an all-time low and cynicism is at an all-time high when it comes to us looking at businesses in the marketplace. And then you put AI on top of that even burns trust further and further. Like, we're in a massive trust issue right now. So this third step of looking at how do we build a never-ending body of evidence, it's how do we build as much evidence and proof as possible that we've helped the patients that we want to attract to achieve the outcomes they want to achieve. So this could be case studies. This could be, can we get 50, 60, 70 case studies on your website? Not testimonials, like in-depth stories, like patients sharing when they first realized they had a hearing challenge, the preconceived fears or concerns they had before visiting you, why they decided to choose you, and if they went any alternative routes before coming to you, how better hearing has impacted their life, their advice to anybody that's considering visiting you for the first time. Like, pull that together, get a picture of them, build these stories. Similarly, if we make any claims, we've got to back it up. We can't get away with just saying stuff like we're the best, we care, we're more advanced, or we care about the community. Like, you've got to prove it. Document your patient journey, explain how your testing is different to anybody else's. If you say that you really care about the community, show the pictures of you sponsoring the under-8s football team, show the pictures of you turning up at that community event that happened. Like, all that stuff really matters to build the evidence. So like, they're the first three. And then once you've got that in place, that's really the first foundation. You're showing up in the right way. You're attracting the people that you want. When they find you, you stand out head and shoulders. Next step is then all about helping practices collect their extra money. So this fundamentally comes down to how are they priced and how are they positioned? Because the hill that I'm willing to die on is, I think hearing care practices need to stop selling hearing aids. And what I mean by that is, if that's what patients believe that you do, you sell hearing aids plus service, it's just a very difficult market to fight in, especially in a very educated market. Because if they think they need the Resound Nexia 9s, and that's what you've told them, and with you they're X amount, and they can do a Google search and see that they're half the price if they buy them online, but the patient's been educated that they need a set of hearing aids to solve a hearing challenge, like you're going to be always on the back foot trying to justify your value. But like, repackaging your pricing to be treatment plan focused, to ensure it's clean and clear on what they get through you that is significantly more than a set of hearing aids, doesn't just allow you to grow your help rate, help more people, grows ASP, and naturally allows you to charge more for the work that you're doing and be paid accordingly. So it's like looking in all those areas. Do you have an adoption plan in order to take patients that previously purchased from elsewhere to come through to you? When service plans expire, do you have ways to charge for extended service plans to ensure that you're being paid adequately for the work you're doing and no hours are going unbilled? Like, all of that stuff very much flows into that. We then go into number 4, which is all about elevate the conversations that matter. And really, this is how well do you communicate with all the key stakeholders? So what's your communications with your patients, with local GPs, with other local businesses that could refer patients to you? And it's having a solid plan in place to communicate with all of them effectively. Like, when it comes to patients, the goal should be not to bombard them with hearing health information. It should be to close the gap between the professional reason they chose you and the personal relationships, which will ensure that they continue to choose you time after time. So what we found works best there is send them a simple email newsletter that rarely speaks about hearing health. It speaks about you, your team, the community. This almost becomes a community resource where they get to almost build relationships with the humans behind the practice. Like, you share that you're going on holiday here and the favorite place you've ever visited was Sicily, and here's why. Like, this creates conversation tracks when they come into the office, but humanizes your team, grows that depth of relationship, and ensures they're a patient for life. They go from this is a transactional relationship to this is a relationship I value. As we move to step 6, it's all about becoming locally iconic. So we've got clarity on who we're for. We look like the logical option for them. We have lots of evidence. Our pricing is aligned. We're communicating effectively. Becoming locally iconic is very much what I mentioned before. This is growing personal brand. This is spotlighting other local businesses. This is very much focused on doing the things that big groups cannot do, which is depth, not width, when it comes to community. So showing up, doing the work, documenting that you're part of it, having an active social media feed that's focused on, here I am with my morning coffee from that independent down the road. Like, all of that stuff really matters. And there's a bunch of strategies there where you can become very well known locally without spending money on ads in order to do so. Seventh step is basics to a gold standard consistently. You asked before about website revisits. This is the game, right? How do we just marginally improve everything all of the time? What's 1% improvement across the board? And I always pull it back to Sir Steve Brailsford, who led the British cycling team in 2003 as the performance director. Prior to that, we'd sucked. Like, we'd won one medal in 110 years, no Tour de France wins. He comes in, becomes the most successful cycling team of all time. Multiple Tour de France wins, 60% of all medals available at the London Olympics. And he put it down to this theory of marginal gains, which was just 1% improvement in multiple areas, from the temperature of the room the cyclist slept in, to having a surgeon come in to show them how to wash their hands effectively, because if they caught a cold in a run up to a race, it could be the difference between winning and losing, to painting the trucks they take for repairs on bikes, painting the floor on that like white, because if a speck of dust falls on the floor and it gets missed and it ends up in a bike, it could have that millisecond difference. Lots of obsessive things that on their own make no difference, but stacking them up across the board started to compound and make a big difference. So very much that. And then the final step in all of this, when practices have implemented all of that, is something we call growing the moat, which is really how do we then put as much distance between ourselves and competition. So really, personal brand is one of the biggest plays to do that. How do we become an influential owner and ensure that people think of us and see us around, and naturally go back to what we spoke about personal brand is we very much lead the thought process when hearing health, hearing care, hearing aid comes up in people's minds. Our name quickly follows. But like, that's the framework that essentially, in a very, very simple 8 to 10 minute overview, that we take practices through. But advertising doesn't show up in this. It's not just throw money at Google Ads and let's hope for the best. It's how do we get all the foundations right? Because I think the biggest challenge that I've always observed in this industry is we just did advertising. It was like, let's run a mailer, let's run an ad, that'll get us some patients. And as I look at it, like, advertising is like asking somebody on a date. Marketing is all the reasons they would say yes. If you get the marketing bit right, the advertising bit becomes significantly easier because you show up, you look good. And naturally, it's a lot easier to get dates if you've got those foundations in place, I would assume. But yeah, that's kind of what we've learned over time, and nearly 9 years. That's the framework that we keep falling back on, that has almost been the backbone of what we've seen work.
Yeah, I think that's such an amazing thing that you've just said, in that 1% increments of anything that you do may not make any difference on their own, but it's that cumulative effect over time. And I'm sure there's lots of really successful businesses out there that have had their way of doing things, their mailers, their this and that, and that's previously worked for them in the past. But that's where we always get complacent, because they're good at what they do. Things have worked in the past. It just remains the same. But obviously, if you are going to want to differentiate yourself, you have to look at things outside the box. So that's great. Thank you so much for going through that. It's really, really interesting in terms of how all those time frameworks link into one another as well. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So if anyone did want to reach out to you as a business, do you just work in America? Do you work in the UK as well? Do you take other practices from around the world? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. We started as a US business, not a UK limited company, but servicing US practices. And then we work with one Canadian practice to learn the Canadian market, and then now have about 20 practices in Canada we work with. Last year, we started working with our first UK practice and now have 3 UK practices. We've just started with the first in Australia and the first in Ireland. So like we're always going to be North America first. Like that's been our biggest market. But as we've learned over time, is there's not that too much difference between the markets in many ways. It's the same people with the same preferences. There's nuances that we learn about the way you need to do things differently. Some things work in the US that don't work in the UK. But the foundations of the framework is not too industry specific. It's really fix your value proposition, look like the best option, price correctly, communicate correctly, do the work to be well known, really focus on the details and become the face and voice of local hearing healthcare. Like that is somewhat universal. So right now, like we're always open for the right practice. And the right practice is the key thing. Like we're not miracle workers. We can't take a broken practice and make it a great practice. But there's a lot of really, really good practices out there that all the magic happens behind closed doors. They're the best kept secret in their own community. And they just need to tell that story effectively and fix some of these foundations. And then they get marginal growth as a result. So they're the ones that we typically get the best results for. Practices that do great work, have great reputation. Marketing can only polish the truth, and if the truth is unremarkable, it's the polish isn't going to make it look too much better. But if there's a good truth behind there, then polishing it up and putting these foundations on top of it really helps.
So what's next for you guys, would you say, as Origin Grey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we have set the ceiling of 100 clients that we want to work with. We're just over 90 right now. We intentionally want to keep it tight. We don't want to become a marketing agency that becomes so wide that it loses depth. We want to know every single client inside out. We want depth of relationship. This isn't a template business. So 100 is our ceiling. So we're not too far away from being at that. And then we'll just have a waiting list for if places become available. So like that's the big focus right now. That's been our North Star for the last few years to really ensure we get to 100 and then take care of the clients that we've got as well as we possibly can. Beyond that, I'm a little unsure myself. There's a few avenues we could go down. Like we could start to buy practices probably in the US and go down that route. That's been spoken about. We could take some of the things that we learn and help practices in alternative ways through training programs, through coaching programs, through more information and templates that we hand them for a significantly lower fee than what we charge for a done-for-you solution. So there's a few options that we're exploring, but North Star for a long time has just been take care of the clients that we've got and try and find the remaining few that are the perfect fit.
So one of the great things that I've learned so much about the industry, where it's going, is actually your podcast that you've got, The Business of Hearing, which are little snippets of like golden nuggets of information about so many things about where the industry is heading and AI and, you know, what we should do as hearing healthcare practices to help. But how did that come about, doing that podcast?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for the kind words. I feel like I've been doing it forever, if I'm honest. I think it was 2021, the first episode, and then I've done weekly since then. So I wouldn't even like to calculate how many hundreds in we are right now. And, you know, it was, we grew very organically for a long time and we didn't do anything. We didn't put anything out there. And really, probably end of 2021, we were like, we're learning a lot. Let's just try to own some form of platform. And was like, Facebook could be very messy. A few of the other platforms would. Nobody's really doing a podcast for private practice hearing care clinics. Let's just start talking about some of the things we're learning. Let's interview practice owners about their journey and what's worked for them. So it very much started as more of an interview podcast. And then when you realize you've committed to weekly, it's like, I'm going to run out of people to interview. So then it
you can interview me one time if you'd like. That's fine.
Absolutely. And it ended up just being like, all right, let's just jump on and talk about a subject and report what's going on. If I've seen something work, let's share why it worked. If I've learned something from my business growth, from hiring the number of people we hire or whatever it may be. This is business owners talking to business owners, whether it's a marketing business that you run like me or a private practice hearing care clinic like you. it's all the same stuff. This is people, decisions, structure, sales, all the things that the business naturally needs to function. So, I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been fun, and looking at the stats, it's crazy, right? I think last time I checked was like 85,000 downloads, which in our tiny, tiny industry is like nearly Wembley Stadium, if you want to put it down to people, over a long period of time, naturally. And it's not kind of crazy numbers in the grand scheme of downloads, views, and everything else. But given our tiny little industry and the number of people in it, it's crazy to know that I can sit here with a microphone and you've got the ability to reach that many people through the joys of the internet.
And if anyone wanted to reach out to you guys, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I suppose you can find me on LinkedIn, Oli Luke, or if you want to find a little more about Orange and Grey and the way we help practices, it's orange-grey.com. Grey spelled Gray, which I don't know I think that must be the American spelling. I'm not too sure. It was an accidental name. But the internet's small. Search my name. There's not too many Oli Lukes. And hopefully you'll be able to find me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been such a great, insightful conversation. And hopefully this will help maybe other business owners and people like myself that may have just started in the industry. And maybe they can reach out to you as well if they'd like any more help in marketing in hearing healthcare. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.